President-elect Trump setting his sights on acquiring not just one, but multiple strategic locations, such as Greenland and the Panama Canal. Here with us now, Anthony Pompliano, professional capital management founder and CEO. And you say he should also be looking at buying as much Bitcoin as possible. Why?
Well, if you think about what he's trying to do here, right, is he's basically looking at strategic reasons to acquire physical property in order to advance the American ideals, ethos, and strategies. Well, what about the digital world? We live in a digital world. And so if you're going to go after the Panama Canal, there's obviously strategic reasons to do that. Greenland as well. Owning Bitcoin is digital real estate. There's only 21 million that will ever exist. We know other countries are mining, buying, holding Bitcoin. And so are we going to let these other countries be the leader, or are we going to be the leader? And I think that's really the decision they have to make.
What do you say to people who say it has had a massive run? It's, mentally, it's difficult to kind of get on board at these levels when we know where it's been. And we've also seen that volatility. Somebody very smart told me, well, take 2% and just money that, you're willing to risk and put it in. I still find that difficult to do.
If you go back to the 1980s or 1990s, buying the S&P 500 was real scary, but you were a genius if you did it in hindsight. And so same thing here with Bitcoin is you can look backwards and see how high it rose. But if you look forward and say, well, if this continues, which we have every reason to believe it will, buying today is the second best time to buy because the first best time was yesterday. And if we keep waiting, it's only going to get worse and worse. And so I think
I hear you. It's just hard to pull the trigger.
Of course. And that's true of all financial assets, right? I mean, think of a real estate market. People will go and they'll say, oh, my God, I could have bought 5 years ago. Now it's at this price. I just can't wrap my head around that. Well, if you wait 5 more years, the dollar is going to continue to be devalued. And so usually if you decide, hey, I want to own something, go ahead and buy it.
Anthony, crypto investors and crypto companies are obviously very excited about a Trump presidency. We now know that Coinbase, Kraken, Ripple, and MoonPay have all donated money to the Trump-Vance inauguration. What does the Trump-Vance time in office over the next 4 years, what has that done to the trajectory of where Bitcoin could go?
Well, I think about 50% of the value they bring to the table has already been captured because really it was just awakening America to this idea that technology is good, business is good, free markets are good, capitalism is good. Bitcoin is the most free market asset that we have. And so out of nowhere, we went from a world where I think a lot of people were saying, hey, is the future actually brighter than the past? To now they're saying, oh, wait a second, we are going to put business-oriented people into the White House and into the administration. Let's go, right? And so you hear things like it's morning in America, people saying it's time to build, et cetera. Now, what I do think is interesting about these businesses is it's actually showing not that crypto is different, it's that crypto companies are the same as non-crypto companies. If you look at Amazon and Facebook and many others, they're also donating $1 million to this inauguration fund. And so it used to be a world where there was kind of like the adults in the room and then the crypto little kids were playing kind of in the corner. But now all of a sudden you're realizing that these crypto companies are showing up and they're saying, look, we are no different than these big multi-billion-dollar, $100 billion companies. We also are going to donate. We have a seat at the table. And so it's really crypto growing up more than it is these other people.
He has to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve or else they turn on him?
I do think that that is a potential risk. And so, look, if you look at the administration, Trump owns Bitcoin and crypto. J.D. Vance owns Bitcoin, I believe. There's a lot of people in the administration. You just go through all the different roles that they've appointed people. And so these are Bitcoiners to a degree, or crypto holders that are going into the office. They're likely to go ahead and buy.
Well, they're going to get criticized for that.
They may get criticized for it, but also if you look at it right now, what is the United States doing? We're buying bonds. We're holding other assets. We have a president that's currently in office and also politicians who are literally day trading assets.
Yep.
And so it's no different, right? I think the big story of 2025 is going to be that crypto has now grown up and is part of the traditional financial system. And there's pros and cons to that. But now we have a seat at the table. You saw that in the political arena in terms of donations and influence. But you also now are going to see it in the financial arena. And that is going to be a huge tailwind, I think, for Bitcoin and crypto in 2025.
Does that include all crypto? Or are we talking more Bitcoin when we talk about crypto?
I think that Bitcoin is the king. It will remain the king. I think that most of the capital flows from the traditional world are going into Bitcoin. There are going to be other assets that enter into the market. You obviously see the ETH ETF got approved. You'll probably see others that get approved as well. But the argument for anything other than Bitcoin is a very different one. That is a technology argument. Yes. It's no different than trying to pick between Amazon and Google and Facebook. The Bitcoin argument is much more akin to, do I want to protect my purchasing power? It's digital gold. And so that argument to me is much more reasonable for the government to say, hey, we're going to go and we're going to put this in our reserves. I don't think that the United States wants to get in the game of trying to pick tech winners or losers based on, the allocation of capital.
Do you have a one-year target for us on Bitcoin,
Nice.
with and without the Bitcoin reserve?
With or without, we're going higher. I don't necessarily have a price, but I do think that if we go ahead and buy Bitcoin, what's interesting is we will not be the first country to do this. There's a lot of other countries who have already bought, they're mining, they're holding Bitcoin. What I do think is important, though, is America is the greatest capital market in the world. And so if America does it, it pretty much reduces all of the career risk, all of the critiques for all these other countries. And so, you know, Russia recently came out and they said, hey, we're mining Bitcoin. We're starting to use it in transactions. People are like, oh, that's Russia. You know, we kind of don't like them. And so they're kind of in the corner. People look at El Salvador and they're like, oh, that's El Salvador. I couldn't point it out on a map.
But if they're doing it, it makes more of a case if your enemies are doing it that you should be.
Well, look, the United States took a pretty drastic action in terms of the sanctions that they went after individuals, country, and also took some of the Russian assets and said, hey, we're going to give to the Ukrainian people. When that happened, Bitcoiners came out and they said, you are actually going to further accelerate the demise of the U.S. dollar because now you have introduced this sanctions risk. There was a paper that came out of the Harvard Economics Department where they talked about, will countries now start to buy Bitcoin, not for price, not for the sovereignty, but actually as a sanctions hedge?
Russia.
And so Russia is actually doing that.
Yes.
Do you think they're the only one?
No.
I wouldn't bet on it.
I will say someone on this program on the network said the first 100K on Bitcoin was the easiest and it could easily get to 200K by next year. I'm like, it took us this long to get to 100K and you think 200K in the next year?
Some people are saying
Wild.
250.
I heard 500.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Well, if you guys just keep it, we'll just wait a couple minutes. You guys will be at a couple million here.
Anthony Pompliano, love having you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.